Welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul and I'll be your host this evening. What are we going to talk about this evening? Well, you know what, it is Super Rugby and Six Nations time, so that's going to be taking up the majority of our time this evening. I hope you're all having a safe and fantastic time as things, well, they're going all over the place at the moment. Let's be honest about it, but hey, it is what it is, and we get on with life as we do. I guess first up, actually, I'll wait until I'll see if I get joined by anyone before I go into those sort of things. But yeah, my weekend saw all of the. Actually, I didn't see all the Super Rugby games. I missed out on the Brumbies versus the Drua game. To be honest, let's be honest, we kind of knew what the result was going to be there with that one, and but I did catch also the England versus Wales game as well, but didn't see Scotland, France, or Ireland, Italy. And a bit of a farce that Ireland, Italy one turned out to be from what I hear, and I'll try and catch up on that one later. But we will talk about that to a certain degree as well. But those are what we're going to go through. I was watching the Super Rugby games in my studio here, as I had my daughters actually with me on the other computer, so it's headphones on while they were listening to the old YouTube. I hope you managed to get a bit more atmospheric place to watch it than I did, to be honest with you. We kicked off on Friday night then with the Highlanders versus the Crusaders. There. In what I called the Tupperware container, but down in Dunedin, because that's what I think Arsham was the first one to kick that one off, calling it that. Down there, obviously, it looked like a cold night with the jackets on, and down there, obviously, no crowds for round two of that. Good evening to Simon and Nocturnal Rights, who are both here, listening and watching on YouTube and joining in the conversation as well. Look, folks, don't forget 8 p.m. every Monday. You can join in the conversation on YouTube and Facebook, or you can listen to you can also watch on Twitter, but you can't join in the conversation. They don't allow comments. And you can also listen to the podcast as well. Just search for New Zealand Sport Radio. Look, the Highlanders were in this one up until half-time, let's be honest. In fact, they had the better of the early going as well, which with the Crusaders getting warned for repeat penalties within the first sort of 10 minutes or so, I think it was. Now, anyone who says that if referees blew up everything, we would have the players can't avoid these things. It will have just been whistles. Might have noticed that the Crusaders basically didn't give up another penalty all half once they were warned. So it's quite rubbish that the players can't control what they're doing. They are rugby is a sport that encourages, actually forces you to basically break the laws as much as the referee will allow you to do, and that's essentially what the players are doing. And so, as I say, for this one, they stopped that, well, I mean, they gave it an offside, which went out to 13-0. They dragged that back to have a 1-point lead at half time. The big thing there was that it was some poor game management by the Highlanders. They got a free kick, and what do? They kicked it long and asked the Crusaders to run back at them with basically time running out in the second half. If they played through a few phases themselves, tapped and gone, then it might have been different. But no, and that allowed the Crusaders to get down into Islanders territory, get a penalty, and take a lead into half time. After being 13-0 down after 13 minutes, clearly that was a good situation for the Crusaders to be in. From that point, sure, the Highlanders scored first in the second half, but the Crusaders pulled away to win this one. Jordan and Williams bashing over. Now the Highlanders did go through 16 phases with Hunt getting held up over the line, so they did go close. They could have done it, but in the end, you've got to say that the Crusaders find a way to get it done, and they did it yet again, finishing 19-34. So looks kind of comfortable on the scoreboard, but this was a 1 point game past the hour mark. It was only in the last 13 minutes that the Crusaders pulled away in this one here, and we'll see that those last 20 minutes or last 10 or so 50 minutes can be key. We saw that in another game, didn't we? So we'll get on to that one in a while, but unsurprisingly, the Crusaders cruising along quite nicely. Sever Reese getting over there. Will Jordan again getting over for a try as well. After that, we went off to watch the Waratahs versus the Reds, and I think a lot of people were expecting it to be kind of like, oh dear, it's never good watching a sort of an Aussie game after a New Zealand game because of the level of the rugby. Now, this one was a wet game between the Waratahs and the Reds, but you would have known it for actually the skill levels. Skill levels in this one were really good. A lot of the handling was very good, especially considering the conditions in this one. And essentially, the Waratahs should have won this game. Sure, the Reds went up sort of 10-0. It was 10-all at half time, but the Waratahs in this one had the majority of the possession and territory, particularly in that first half. 67% possession, 77% territory, but they had opportunities. And one that springs to mind was the right winger. Could have gone outside and probably would have scored. Instead, he cuts back inside. The play goes all the way across the left wing. The left wing gets bundled out into touch. Basically, the Tars had no confidence as soon as they got anywhere near that white line to actually score the points. And that's really what lost them this game. They made the Reds make nearly twice as many tackles. They made 175 meters more running. This was all the Waratahs. The Waratahs won this game in every single way, apart from on the scoreboard, because they lack confidence on finishing at the end of the day, whereas the Reds don't. They have that confidence and also had 100% kicking as well, which also helped. And so you've got to say that the Reds got out of jail with this one. It was all Tars in that first half, but the Tars just couldn't finish it, couldn't get the points, and the Reds came away with the win. There were some line-out issues with people people not even jumping for them, but as I say, for the conditions, this was a high-quality game by these sides. Really impressed by the Tars and Reds handling in this one, especially after we've seen in week one some real poor handling by the Aussie side in much better conditions than this, or at least that's what it looked like on the TV, if we're going to be honest with you on that one. Looking in the live chat, AK says he's still impressed with the Super Rugby teams playing far too loose style could play compared to European clubs. Not a great prep for Test rugby. Well, we'll have to wait and see on that one. I guess one of the things by playing loose like this is that you get used to finishing the opportunities you get. And so when you do get the opportunity at Test level, you finish it because you have plenty of practice finishing moves. It's definitely different style than we're seeing out of France and South Africa. We'll talk about that later when we get on to the Six Nations on that one. So Reds got out of jail with a 4-point win at 16-20 in this one. They did turn down 3 towards the end and got themselves the try that put them in the lead rather than drawing. So it was the right call in the end. I was a bit concerned when they went for that and did that. On Saturday afternoon, then we kicked off with that Brumbies versus the. So I guess to me, the side that's impressed me most so far has been the Waratahs. By the way, wasn't expecting much out of them, but their play, the Sunday play, has been really good. Now, so Waratahs really have impressed me so far compared to my expectations of what I was expecting from them in this one. I think a team that has probably underperformed in some way is probably the Fijian Drua. A lot of people upset with. A lot of people were hoping for a lot more from them. Obviously, in round one, they lost to the Waratahs 40-10, and they lost 42-3 in this one to the Brumbies. As I say, I didn't watch this one. I had my daughters here. I knew what the results were going to be, and it was an afternoon game, which didn't sort of fit in well with family life. So. Brumbies getting the job done. Try bonus point win. What else did we kind of expect, really? I think been listening to the What a Lad podcast and with their kind of preview shows for the Super Rugby rounds now. Some questions around some of the stuff they say, but one of the things on there is that look, I think the Drua, Moana Pacifica, and we'll put the Rebels in there as well. Are definitely the bottom three teams. At the moment, I think, and then it's going to be tight then between the Tars and the Force for me for that last quarterfinal position at the moment. Moving on then, Blues versus the Hurricanes, and a game again that the Blues really should have won this one. They had the lead, but not only did they have the lead, but they should have had a bigger lead, in my opinion. Leading 24-14 at halftime, that lead should have been bigger. Again, all the territory, all the possession for the Blues, but just not finishing in that first half, not getting the points on the board that they really should have done. The Hurricanes evened things up a lot more in that second half, and obviously, and then did pull it back over that last 10 minutes with 3 tries in the last 10 minutes, and obviously a hat trick for Rayasi. I did put a tweet out there on the night saying who is the most underrated winger in New Zealand, and I think Rayasi is there. Mark Talia was also mentioned as another one, and also Dane Coles was another name that was thrown out there as a most underrated winger on that one. Rayasi, and someone said underrated by the All Blacks coaches, but I think also by the Hurricanes coaches. Look, he doesn't regularly get a starting spot. He did this week, and he showed what he can do. So hopefully this cements him now in a starting spot for the rest of the season, because he has been playing really well in this one. But a lot of talk around the fact that the Blues hadn't had a game last weekend, weren't match fit, ran out of steam in that last 10 minutes. Personally, look, I think that's an excuse and shouldn't be the case with teams anymore. Cycling, a team that a sport that I watch, and you find now that riders used to race to get fit. Now they get fit in training, and they can simulate all that they need, and then in the race, so every race they turn up at top form. And I think not having a game last weekend shouldn't have been an excuse for the Blues running out of steam in this one at the end there. The Blues didn't put up points on the board that they should have in the first half, and then they then 3 tries in that last 10 minutes really not good. Now, I predicted the Blues, but then when I realised actually they were missing Papiali'i, Akiri Iwani, and Bowden Barrett, boy oh boy, those 3 were 3 big losses for this Blues team, and I think they just don't have the depth. They have to have those top players. It's not like the Crusaders, who have managed to survive not having Richard Mwanga. The Blues cannot afford not to have those. They're All Blacks available for them. in this one. Obviously, a lot of talk in this game about Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. The alternate right says he's not the answer at 12, too light. Reckons he's a 13 or a 15. Wow. This is another discussion topic. At the moment, does New Zealand have a 12 in the country? There's lots of good 13s. Anton Brown, Goodhue, Braden Enor, even Fanuku in that 13. There's lots of good 13s. Rico Iwani, running around. 12s, is David Havili really a 12? It's come to lately without Laumape here. Do we have any real sort of natural 12s in the country? So you can understand why he's in that position. I think it's the right place probably for him. 13, there's a lot of defensive reads which he won't be used to, and they were the commentators were gushing around about RTS in the opening sort of 20 or so minutes. Why? Well, because he was being asked to do everything within his skill set, right? He was being given the ball and given a line to run at. And he was doing that very, very well. Unsurprisingly, he's a very good player. When it came to the tackling, positioning on the defence, that's where the questions are going to be, not on his attacking play. Yes, he got brushed off a tackle going too high towards the I can't remember if it was Arnie Surveyor's try or one of the other tries within the last 10 minutes. So RTS, look, yes, a very good first run out considering where he's come from, but a lot of work still to do in this one. On the opposite side of the pitch, Bailin Sullivan was arguably the best centre of the game. Was very impressed with how he played for the Hurricanes in that 13 jersey there. So I thought he had a great game outside of Julian Surveyor, obviously at 12. Interesting to see him move inside. Bailin Sullivan has 7 passes, 8 runs there for only 37 metres. So a bit surprised that Julian Surveyor had more than that. But those 7 passes, he was linking with other players really well and was very impressed with Bailin Sullivan. Julian Surveyor got through a hell of a lot, actually 10 tackles and only missed 1. So interesting seeing him at 12. Could he be the answer for the All Blacks at 12? As I take a beer for those of you on the podcast, or drink of the beer, probably not, let's be honest, but didn't disgrace himself in there at all. So so that's what they ran out of steam. Some stats here. Choke got through 19 tackles, missed 1, so he got through a bit of workload as well. Ide Surveyor obviously also had his usual good game, playing in that 8 jersey now pretty consistently. I think we can say he's not a 7 anymore. It'd be interesting to see where the All Blacks play him, but probably in that 8 role, you would have to think. Mark Talia, as mentioned, also Keller Clark. Great to see Keller Clark back as well. Obviously, his last year was a bit of a wasted year, or a bit of a lost year, where he tried to make the 7s for the Olympics, didn't quite make the team. I can't remember if he was a travelling reserve or whether he was just a reserve, or non-travelling reserve for the Olympics. He had a good evening. Good to see him back, 95 metres running with that one as well. So the number of players are interest players to see coming back and playing well. Jack Goodhue, he had a good game. Was mentioned quite a bit as well in there. But yeah, really the Blues faded in that last 10 minutes, and no real excuses. I think really should be there, and they'll be very upset about that. Those key players I mentioned at the beginning, they just could not afford to miss. Off the back of that, went to the Rebels versus Western Force. Western Force winning this one at 3-28 in this one. The Force showing the difference between last season when they were given like 2 months to put a team together, to the difference between actually having a full off season to put your team together, and be able to have a proper pre-season as well. So good to see that win by the Force. The Rebels are a bit of a mess. Let's be honest. In this one, lineouts not great. I mean, 7 missed lineouts or 7 lost lineouts by both of them in this one, and the Force will come up against much better opposition. Let's be honest, but I say a good win for them in that fight with I think the Waratahs for the 8th place and getting knocked out in the quarterfinals. But hey, making the finals is kind of big for them at the end of the game, end of the day. In that discussion about 12s and 13s, not so right says Goodhue could be the 12. Yes, he could be a 12, but I think he is naturally a 13, and it's where his offloading game really comes into its own in that 13 channel, rather than the 12 one. But that one not so great about that one. And Simon points out that Clark was in a hotel outside the Olympic Village up in Japan last year as that travelling reserve. Some stuff in the news, and I saw a sort of kind of an opinion piece on stuff suggesting that there should be more player loans to help out Moana Pacifica, and that certain other players should have been encouraged to join Moana Pacifica. Look, that isn't how we help out Moana Pacifica. The way we helped out Moana Pacifica was giving them their contract earlier than they got it, giving them time to actually be able to recruit players and get things set up. They weren't given that. They were 6 months at least behind where they needed to have that contract in place to be able to sign players. And so hence this season is going to be a struggle for them. Same for the Drua. And I think we'll see quite a lot of, particularly with Moana Pacifica, quite a lot of turnover in that squad between season 1 and season 2 before it settles down from there. So from that one, look, no, I don't think loaning players is the right way, or loaning New Zealand Tide or All Blacks Tide players into them is not the way forward. So it would be a very short-term plaster to a problem that shouldn't have been there in the first place. Simon says, yeah, the SEN had 71 people believing the Rebels were going to beat the Force. Oh dear. Yes, well, I think, and I was just surprised by someone on one of the commentators saying, "Oh yeah, I've gone out on a limb picking the Force." I was like, "What?" That was a very obvious one to me, that the Force were going to beat Rebels. But there we go. A lot of people are saying not understanding what happened with the Force last year, and that's one of my problems with the What a Lad podcast. Is look, why aren't they talking about Pryor being a fantasy player? Look, he's a scrum half who kicks goals, but they seem to have missed that. But anyway, that's by the by on that one. And at least the Moana Pacifica will get their season underway this Friday up against the Crusaders. Well, good luck, boys. That's not going to be good. Nocturne Wright said, might be nice to play an NPC side to warm up. Yeah, except the problem is the NPC sides aren't together at the moment. They're all those players are in pre-season for their clubs, so the seasons don't align for that kind of thing to happen. Moana Pacifica did need, their warm-ups, and they were supposed to have one against the Blues, I think it was. No, they got cancelled. Oh, the Highlanders, sorry, wasn't it? They got cancelled in pre-season. So and obviously having two of them now, and had the players locked up in hotel rooms. It's going to be a difficult one. I am going to try and see if I can get a media pass for that Moana Pacifica game against the Crusaders, and hopefully bring you post-match interviews from that game. We'll see if I can get a hold of media pass for that one. Obviously, sad news last week as well, with the loss of two key players, with Vidiri, Jolie Vidiri, passing away due to COVID complications. Someone who, unfortunately, I'll be honest, not someone I was aware of as a player. But apparently had kind of the kidney issues in a similar way that John Olomu, who he played with, also had. So hopefully, so thoughts through with his friends and family with that one. And then also Inga the winger, Tungamala, someone I do remember as a Wigan Warriors winger, opposite side to Jason Robinson. I mean, two very different, but two very deadly wingers. I think Martin O'Fire also crossed over careers with him as well. So both of them passing away way too early on you. Way too early in life. And again, thoughts with I say. Tugamala also went on to play for Newcastle Warriors, had a big impact on Johnny Wilkinson during his early days. Real sad. Two big names, or two greats within New Zealand, from what I understand. So I don't remember Vidiri as a player, but Tugamala, wow, yes, he was some player on that one. Very sad for their friends and family in that one, and good to see that they were duly remembered during the games at the weekend. So that's last week. Let's look forward then to the coming weekend, and what do we have? We got Moana Pacifica up against Crusaders first off on Friday night. As I said, look, Crusaders by 40, something like that. The 3 games in, the rust will have been worn off. Will players like Blackadder, maybe Richard Mwanga come back? Richard Mwanga, I doubt it. I think he's still got a couple more weeks away. But there's no reason to rush him back for a game like this one. So a big win I expect by the Crusaders. As I say, I'll try and get up to Mount Smart for that game. That's followed up by the Fijian Drua versus the Rebels. Boy, oh boy, two sides that really are struggling. Which side is going to lose the least? Also, I don't know if the Queensland floods are going to have any impact on whether the Fijian Drua will get to play or not. Because I think they're based up there somewhere, aren't they? But I think I'm going to pick the Rebels by 3. Not really convinced, but look, it's going to be I say the least worst team on the night for that one. Into Saturday then, and we've got the Western Force versus the Reds. Look, the Reds got out of jail last weekend. They've beaten the Rebels by less than the Force beat the Rebels, but the Reds should click and should have too much for the Force. So I'm going to back the Reds by 3. But they say the Reds really aren't clicking and really haven't got up to speed yet this season, whereas the Western Force are at least are executing somewhere near what we think they're capable of. The Reds are nowhere near that stage yet, but still, I think the Reds should come through that one. We then have the Blues versus the Chiefs up at Eden Park. With that last 10 minutes against the Hurricanes, boy oh boy, I'm missing key players. I'm actually going to go for the Chiefs in the away win here by 7 up against the Blues. The Chiefs obviously had a week off, but that meant that actually they got to travel home to Hamilton and Waikato earlier than other teams. So have actually had perhaps a better preparation also coming in to this game, whereas the Blues had to relocate from Queenstown all the way back up to Auckland. Then I was down to Wellington for the Hurricanes versus the Highlanders. Wow. The 2 losses for the Highlanders, the Hurricanes, with that real morale boosting win, coming back to came back in that last 10 minutes against the Blues, and that confidence boost for the Hurricanes. I'm going to back the Hurricanes by 5 in this one. Performing better than I expected, and if they get Royassi and get the ball to him, boy oh boy, he can cause problems, as we've seen. Rounding things out, the Brumbies versus the Waratahs. Look, as I say, I've been impressed by the Waratahs. Still, this is the Brumbies. They're one of the top 2 teams in Australia. Comfortable home win for the Brumbies. I said comfortable, and I picked 7. I'm going to go for 10 actually. So Brumbies by 10 over the Waratahs. I think they're executing better, and I think their set piece dominated game will be better against the Waratahs in this one. Nocturnal Rights thinks that Highlanders issue speed on the flanks, and that'll make a big difference as to who they select on their wings. So we'll see how those selections go and how right he is around that one. The other thing that's happening this weekend is that Super Rugby Aupiki, the women's Super Rugby competition over here in New Zealand, is kicking off this weekend with a game on Saturday and a game on Sunday. The Saturday game, 1:45 on Sky Sports 1 and 3:45 on Sunday. Saturday sees the Blues take on the Chiefs with a couple of players perhaps in the Chiefs that you wouldn't expect there. Portia Woodman, for example, a Northland girl playing for the Chiefs. It's surprised to see her not in the blue jersey for the Blues there. And then Mata'atu, the South Island team, up against the Hurricanes. Look, for this one, it's very difficult to pick and know which sides to go with. Let's be honest. The Chiefs built around that Waikato side, who's very strong and did well in the Farah Palmer Cup last year. Mata'atu built around, obviously, the Canterbury team that has been successful for so long. So I'd go Chiefs and Mata'atu for now in those 2 games. But anyone's guess. Look, the Blues, having obviously Auckland, a very strong women's team, Farah Palmer Cup team as well, and with some of those Northland girls. So that's how I'm going to give it. But I'd say I would have to wait and see how this one all pans out. Obviously, this is shining a light on the women's game. And the fact that it's just 1 round of games. Should it be more than that? Quite a few opinion and discussion pieces in various news articles at the moment. Look, I think it needs to be more than this, but there is the good point that we do have some girls playing in this who come pretty much straight out of school. We've only had 2 or 3 years rugby up against seasoned multi-year Black Ferns. But then again, that's what they face in the Farah Palmer Cup. That's what they face at club level. But the Black Ferns play club rugby, unlike the All Blacks. So, so look, there are those. So I'm not sure that yes, it's an issue. We don't have all the pathways in place that we should have for the women's game, or the levels that should be there. There's still a lot of work to be done at those levels, but also I do think that more should be done at just a 1 round competition isn't enough to develop players. We're talking about the Rugby World Cup and for the Black Ferns. Thank you, Simon, correcting me that the fourth game is actually on Friday night, like midnight kickoff, which is why I was thinking it was Saturday game. I was wondering what that was all about. So yes, obviously being played in Perth. First time the Force been back there in ages now with that one. That's all the kind of rugby from a New Zealand point of view that is coming up. Let's also have a chat about some of the Six Nations stuff that took place last weekend. Before they have a week off and then come back with the round 3 games. So in round 2, we had Scotland versus France, finished 17-36. Now, I was listening to James Beattie, I got his first name right, Beattie, the ex-Scottish international, on a podcast, and he was saying, look, one of the things about France is that they play a very blitz defence, a bit like South Africa. So you're going to need things like your crossfield kicks, your chips over the top to beat that. And that Scotland basically needed to get in the lead if they're going to have any chance in this one. If they got behind, chasing was going to be very, very difficult. Now, Scotland have been France's bogey team, having won 3 out of 4 games going into this one. But France got ahead with a try after 8 minutes and basically never looked back from there. Scotland were never really able to sort of get back or to get their nose in front. They got back nearly on terms at 10-12 after the half-hour mark, but a try on half-time really was the nail in the coffin that meant that they trailed at 9 points going into the half, 10-19. Chasing the game, Scotland were never going to have it. We're always going to have it very, very difficult in this one. So yes, very difficult for them to be to come back once they got behind. And France shown that they're a very, very good side. Now, France, a bit like South Africa, a side that's playing, well, been using that 6-2 bench, which does start to make me think, do we need 8 players on the bench? Can we do just 6? Basically 3 front row players, 1 other forward, a half back, and then or a scrum half of 9, and then basically 1 player to replace all the backs. That way, you got less interchanges. More players have to play 80 minutes. They have to work more on cardio rather than strength. We have players that aren't quite so big, and therefore, hopefully, the collisions are less. We end up with less injuries. Is kind of the thinking that goes behind that. By having 6, pretty much your whole pack getting replaced after sort of 50 minutes, 60 minutes means that the players don't have to be conditioned so much. And boy, oh boy, do France bring big boys off the bench to run around for just half an hour. They are very, very big. Lots of 19 stone plus guys. So, yes, just some thoughts there. But, interesting to hear hear BT, not Warren BT, geez, JBT, sort of talking about how basically the France and Scotland and South Africa playing similar styles, and yet we think of the with lots of kicking, lots of defence, brush defence, and then basically taking advantage of the situation. And yet we think of France being a much more creative team. And I guess they do have strike weapons that when they do get opportunities, they boy oh boy, do they finish off some nice tries. I guess that's the difference. Is more about that than necessarily, but the basics, the skeleton of their game is very similar to the one that was put that say that the South African team is also built on. England Wales. Sorry, then England won this one 23-19, but boy oh boy, it shouldn't have been that close. To be honest with you, getting down to with Wales's try. And then just before the end and a restart meant that Wales had an opportunity. They should never have been given that one, really. England did lead 12-0 at half-time, but with Liam Williams getting a yellow card in there. But they really should have been leading by more than that. They dominated that first half, 6% possession, 51% territory, but all that possession, but just weren't putting up points in this game. So all those points in that first half were from the boot of Marcus Smith. So he didn't get across that try line once, and that's really what England should have been doing. They should have been scoring points in that should have been scoring tries in that first half. and they got away with this one because Wales came back and just didn't quite have enough to get over the line. Wales ending up scoring 3 tries to just 1 by England. To say just not enough to come back. But yep, a big so really I say England there, a bit like teams, a bit like the Blues, and also the Waratahs, dominating the first half, getting a lead, but not the points that the possession and territory really should have earned them. They were lucky, unlike those other 2 teams who got caught heading towards the line in that one. Finally, then we had Ireland versus Italy, finished 57-6. But in all honesty, that's not the talking point of the game. I've not seen this one, but having read about it, what happened was had an injury on 10 minutes to the Italian hooker. He gets replaced, and then Faiva, the replacement hooker, gets himself red carded, which takes the Italian team down to 14. But both hookers, key here is that both hookers were injured. So for the first scrum, they took off their a winger ball on a prop onto the front row, but had to be uncontested scrums. And because uncontested scrums, that's another player that has to go off. So Italy were playing with 13 players, not 14, for the majority of the game, and then also lost, with 5 minutes to go, a player to a yellow card to finish on 12 players in this one. So, yeah, as a spectacle, a bit of a total no-no. Now, that's I'm all for red cards not being replaced, but then because the I'm not a fan of the 20-minute sort of sin bin style thing for the for red cards. But because the hooker was already injured, I think losing a second player because uncontested scrums is over the top as far as punishments go. I get why people do it, because I get why the rules are like that way, because you don't want people falsely going to uncontested scrums so that and keeping the same number of players on the pitch. So if you go to uncontested scrums, basically you lose a player to prove that you can't properly put a scrum down. So I get that, but in this case where you know that there's definitely been no skullduggery about trying to go to uncontested scrums, that because they've lost both their hookers, one to serious arm injury, the other one to a red card. I say losing 2 players for a red card, which is effectively what happened here, seemed overly harsh. But I'm not sure what the real answer is. These scenarios can happen, and it's a matter of juggling the laws a bit to figure out how we don't end up with this situation again, because it makes a farce of the game. Let's be honest, in this case. Now, a lot of people, I know it's from you say that the 20-minute red card would allow them to be at 14 because of obviously uncontested scrums. They'd still have lost a player, but they would have had to play for the rest of the other bit. But yes, I don't think coming them back to 15, if that had been the case, is fair. So there we go. The red card is supposed to be a big deterrent to stop players from penalising, and as I showed in the Crusaders game, I think a lot of penalties are intentional rather than being by accident, and so I think that we need as big a deterrent as possible to basically stop as many penalties, as much foul play as possible, because at the moment we're encouraging foul play. That's my kind of roundup from the Six Nations. I guess just a quick look at the table on that one. So France topped the table on 14 points after 3 rounds, not 2 rounds. Ireland are second with 2 wins and a loss on 11 points. England third with 2 wins now and a loss one over Italy, one over Wales. They beat the bottom two teams. Still got the top two, Ireland and France, to come. So tough one for England from now on. Scotland down in fourth on 5 points, same number of points as Wales, but have got a better points difference. But Scotland still to play Italy. Well, actually, as of Wales. So the next round sees Wales take on France. You've got to say France will go into that one as hot favourites. Italy versus Scotland. Scotland will be hot favourites there. England, Ireland. Ireland will be favourites going to that into Twickenham. But England at home, Ireland travelling. Boy, oh boy, that's definitely the pick of the round from round 4. And then the Super Sunday on the final round sees Wales versus Italy. Wales obviously up there. Ireland versus Scotland should be a good game, but in Scotland still not producing it away from Murrayfield. Which means you'd expect an Ireland win there. And then France versus England in Paris. Will that be the crowning of the French Grand Slam? Looking at the fixtures and the results so far, you've got to say that is probably where we're going to be on the 20th of March. That's a 9 a.m. kickoff. So nice one over breakfast for you all folks here in New Zealand. Well, there you go. I think that wraps everything up for this week on the Driving Maul show. Don't forget to join me next Monday at 8 p.m. Also, this Wednesday, we kick off our NRL coverage with our season preview with the Standoff show. So every Wednesday at 8 p.m. will be our Standoff show for the Rugby League show for the rest of the season. And don't forget, you can support the us over at patreon.com/NZ Sport Radio to help us bring all this content to you. Hopefully, I will have some stuff from the game on Friday night with Moana Pacifica versus Crusaders. Have a cracking week and stay safe, folks.